Samsaradava nalaliraloka Tranaya karuna gana ganatvam Praptasya kayana gunanavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nitya Gita Vaditra Madhyan Manasora Sena Romancha Kampa Shutaranga Vajo Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityananam Shingarathan Mandira Marjanado Yuktasya Bhaktam Sanyunjatopi Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Chaturvida Shri Bhagavat Prasado Swadana Triptan Haribaksha Sangram Kritraiva Triptim Bhajata Sadaiva Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Shri Radhika Madhava Yorapara Madhurya Leela Gunarupa Namnam Pratikshana Lolupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam
Pratikshana Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam
Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam
Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam
Nikunjayo no Rati Keli Sedhai Yayali Vir Yukti
Vasudeva Sadmi
Into Prabhoya Priya Eva Tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinam
Indo Prabhuya Pyaiva Dasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda
Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasado Yasya Prasada Nagati Kutopi
Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasya Prasada Nagati Kutopi
Jayam Stuvam Stasaya Satri Sadyam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinam
Nagati Daksha Nagati Malavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda
Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinam
Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda
Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramansa Paravajik Chasta Saraswati Shri Shrimadi's Divine Grace Sri Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Ram Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhaktavinda Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Ganga Maya Ki Jai Jamuna Maya Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktavinda Ki Jai Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanand. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Patita Pavana Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanami Namaste Saraswati Devi Guru Vaicharya Nivase Saraswati.
Namaste
Narasingaya.
Namaste Narasingaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Prahlada Dadaine Hiranyakashipurvaksha
Anyakashipurvaksha
Silatankanakalaye
Shilatam Kanakalaye
Ito Nishinga Parato Nishinga
Ko Nishinha Padado Nishinha
Jato Jato Ja Mitato Nishinga
Yato Yato Myamitato Nishinha
Bair Nishinga Rudaye Nishinga
Aye Nishinha Daye Nishinha
Narasimha Madhimi Sharanam Prapade
Narashinamadim Saranam Papada
Narasimha Madhim Sharanam Prapade
Narashinamadim Saranam Papada
Abakara Kamala Bade Nakam Adabota Shinga Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanavinga Kesavadita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re
Avakara Kamavare Nakam Adhuta Singha Alita Hiranyakashipu Tanuringa Vishavajita Nadari Rupa Jai Jagadesha Re Jai Jagadesha Re Jai Jagadesha Re
Kesavadruta Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Jaya
Keshavadita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadesha Re Jaya Jagadesha Re Jaya Jagadesha Re
Jaya Nishingadev Jaya Nrishingadev Nrishingadev Jaya Nrishingadev
Narasinghadev Jaya Narasinghadev Jaya Narasinghadev Jaya Narasinghadev
Jaya Narahari Jaya Narahari Narahari Jaya Narahari
Narahari Jaya Narahari Jaya Narahari Jaya Narahari
Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha
Gade Jaya Narasinghadev Jaya Narasinghadev Jaya Narasinghadev
Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Prahlad Maharaj Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj
Shingadev Bhagavan ki jai. Vrindaye Tulsi Devaya Priyaye Keshavasya Cha Vishnu Bhakti Lauri Devi Satyvrata Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tulsi Devaya Priyaye Keshavasya Cha Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Satyvrata Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tulsi Devaya Priyaye Keshavasya Cha Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Satyvrata Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tulsi Devi Maharani ki jai.
Krishna preyasi namo namaha.
Shri Krishna preyasi namo namaha.
Namo namaha. Tulasi Krishna preyasi namo namaha. Radha Krishna seva pabo Hey Abhilashi.
Radha Krishna seva pava hey Abhilashi.
Radha Krishna seva pabo ye Abhilashi.
Radha Krishna seva pava hey Abhilashi.
Je tomar sharan loy tara vancha purna hoy.
Ye tumhara sarana loy Vancha purna hoy.
Kripa kori koro bare Vrindavan vashi.
Kripa kori koro tore Vrindavanavasi.
Tumi kripa kori koro tare Vrindavan vashi.
Kori karatare Vrindavanavasi.
Morae Abhilash Bilash kunje diyova.
Morae Abhilash Bilash kunje diyova.
Nayane heribo sada jugal rup rashi.
Nayane ribasada yugal parasi.
Nayane heribo sada jugal rup rashi.
Ayare
निवेदन धरो सखीरनुगत करो.
निवेदन धरो सखीरनुगत करो.
निवेदन धरो सखीरनुगत करो.
निवेदन धरो सखीरनुगत करो.
सेवाधिकार दिए करो निज दासी.
सेवाधिकार दिए करो निज दासी.
सेवाधिकार दियो दिए करो वासी.
सेवाधिकार दिए करो निज दासी.
दीना कृष्ण दासे कोई जे ना मोरा हो.
दीना कृष्ण दासे कोई जे ना मोरा हो.
श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेम सदा ये नभासी.
मुकुंद प्रेम सदा ये नभासी.
श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेम सदा ये नभासी.
श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेम sadai namasi.
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ते प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे.
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ते प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे.
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे.
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे.
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे.
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani. हो जया वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी. बोलो जय श्री तुलसी महारानी देवी की जय.
Tulsi Devi Marani ki jai. Vrindaye Tulsi Devai Priyaye Keshavasya cha Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Satyvrata Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tulsi Devai Priyaye Keshavasya cha Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Satyavrataya Namo Namaha. Pindaye Tulsi Deva Priyaye Keshavasya Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Satyavrataya Namo Namaha. Pindaye Tulsi Devi Maharani Ki Jai. Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pacharani Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Desatarine. Beloved of Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire is to obtain the service of Shishi Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you has his wishes fulfilled. Bestowing your mercy upon him, you make him resident of Vrindavan. My desire is they also grant me residence in the pleasure groves of Shri Vrindavan Dham. Thus, within my vision, I always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of the cowherd damsels of Raja. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maidservant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna prays, may always in love, Shri Radha and Govinda Tulsi Devi Maharani Ki Jai.
Darpanamajanam Pavamada Vagninivapanam Shreyakari Vachandrika Vitaranam Vidya Vadu Jivanam Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam Pratipadam Purnamrita Swadanam
Sarvatmasnapanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Bahudani Sarva Saktis Tatrapita Niyamitakshmarina Kala Etadrisi Tava Kripa Bhavan Mamapi Durdaivam Drishyate Nanuraka Trinadapi Sunichena Tararapi Sahishnana Amanina Manadena Kirtanina Sadahari Na dhanam na janam na sundarim Kavitamba jagarisha kamaye Mama janmane janmaneshwari Bhavatar bhakti rahituki twai Ainanda tanuja kinkaram Patitamam vishame bhavam buddho Kripaya tava pad pankajasti taduli sadrisham vichintaya Nayanam galora shrudharaya Vadanam gadgadardaya gira Purakayinchitam bapukada Tavanama grahane bhavishyati Juga itam nimishena Chakyusha prarusa itam Sunya itam jagata sarvam Govinda virahena me Asli shabapa daratam pinashtamam Adarshanar marmatam karotuva Yatatatava vidadatulam pato Matpranatastu saiva naparaha Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Chaitanya Saksastakam Ki Jai. Most blessed Buddhi Samati Bhakti Vedanta Swami. Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pacharani Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskati Desatai.
Glory to the
Shri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life, of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. These transcendental names you have invested all your transcendental energies. They are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by holy names, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them.
Once we chant
Chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than a straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer respect to others. In such a state of mind,
one can chant the name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causes was of service, birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor.
Yet somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms of your lotus feet.
O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name?
When will my voice choke up, and when will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your holy name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 20 years or more.
Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain,
and I feel you're vacant
in the world in your absence. I know
no one but Krishna is my Lord, and he shall remain so, even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Siksastakam Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Puti Samata Bhakti Swanta Namaste Saraswati Devi Guru Manachari Visesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Desathari.
There are 10 offenses in matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1.
To blaspheme the devotees who dedicate their lives to propagating the holy names of the Lord.
2.
Consider the names of demigods like Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma to be considered independent names of Lord Vishnu.
3.
To disobey the orders of the spiritual master.
4.
To blaspheme the Vedic literature or literature pursuant to the Vedic version.
5.
To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna as imagination.
6.
To give some interpretation on the holy name of the Lord.
7.
To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord.
8.
To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in Vedas as fruit of activities of karma kanda.
9.
To instruct the faithless person by the glories of the holy name.
And 10.
To not have complete faith in
chanting the holy names
and to maintain
material attachments
even after
understanding
so many instructions in this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting.
Every devotee claims to be Vaishnava
must
must
carefully guard against these
offenses
in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisance unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just like desire trees that can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they're full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanchakapatarabhischa, Kripasindhabhyabhicha, Patittanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namo Namaha, Vaishnava Thakura Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Puti Samata Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Guru Manachari Visesa Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 8. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Daskarne. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivindam. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 8, verse number 10. Sachapi yatra purusho Vishwastit udbhavapyaya Muktvatma mayam mayesha Site sarva guhasaya. Sa, he, cha, also, api, as he is, yatra, where, purusha, the personality of Godhead, vishwa, the material worlds, stiti, maintenance, udbhava, creation, apyaya, annihilation, muktava, without being touched. Atma mayam, own energy. Maya Isha, the Lord of all energies. Shete, does lie on. Sarva Guha Shaya, one who lies in everyone's heart. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Please also explain the personality of Godhead, who lies in every heart as the super soul and as the Lord of all energies, but is untouched by his external energy. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Undoubtedly, the form of the Lord, who was seen by Brahma, must be transcendental. Otherwise, how could he simply look upon the creative energy without being touched? It is understood also that the same Purusha lies in the heart of every living entity. This also requires proper explanation. Text number 11. Purusha Vayavarloka Sapala Purvakalpitaha Lokar Amusyavayava Sapalid Iti Susruma. Purusha, the universal form of the Lord. Virat Purusha. Avayavai, by different parts of the body. Lokaha, the planetary system. Sapala, with respective governors. Purva, formerly. Kalpita, discussed. Lokai, by the different planetary systems. Amusya, his. Avayava, different parts of the body. Sapalai, with the governors. Iti, thus. Susruma, I heard. O learned Brahmana, it was formerly explained that all the planets of the universe, with their respective governors, are situated in the different parts of the gigantic body of the Virat Purusha. I have also heard that the different planetary systems are supposed to be in the gigantic body of the Virat Rupa. But what is their actual position? Will you please explain that? Text 12. Yavan kalpo vikalpava yata kalo numiyate bhutabhavya pavachabda ayurmanam shayatsata. Yavan, as it is. Kalpa, the duration of time between creation and annihilation. Vikalpa, subsidiary creation and annihilation. Va, either. Yata, as also. Kala, the time. Anumiyate, is measured. Bhuta, past. Bhavya, future. Bhavat, present. Sabda, sound. Ayu, duration of life. Manam, measurement. Cha, also. Yat, which. Sata, of all beings in all planets. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Also, please explain the duration of time between creation and annihilation, and that of other subsidiary creations, as well as the nature of time, indicated by the sound of past, present, and future. Also, please explain the duration and measurement of life of the different living beings known as the demigods, the human beings, etc., in different planets of the universe. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Past, present, and future are different features of time to indicate the duration of life for the universe and all its paraphernalia, including the different living beings in different planets. Okay, text number 13. Kalasyanugatir yatu lakshyate nve brihat api yavat ya karma gatayo yadrisi dvija sattama. Kalasya, of eternal time. Anugati, beginning. Ya, to. As they are. Lakshyate, experienced. Anvi, small. Bihati, great. Api, even. Yavat ya, as long as. Karma gataya, in terms of the work performed. Yadrishi, as it may. Dvija satama, O purest of all brahmanas. O purest, a translation by Srila Prabhupada, O purest of the brahmanas, please also explain the cause of the different durations of time, both short and long, as well as the beginning of time, following the course of action. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Text number 14. Yasmin karma samavayo yata yeno pagriyate gunanam guninam chaiva parinamam avipsatam. Yasmin, in which karma, actions, samavaya, accumulation, yata, as far as, yena, by which, upagrihite, takes over, gunanam, of the different modes of material nature, guninam, of the living beings, cha, also, eva, certainly, parinamam, resultant, abipsatam, of the desires. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Then again, kindly describe how the proportionate accumulation of the reactions resulting from the different modes of material nature act upon the desiring living being, promoting or degrading him among the different species of life, beginning from the demigods down to the most insignificant creatures. Purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The actions and reactions of all works in the material modes of nature, either in the minute form or in the gigantic form, are accumulated, and thus the result of such accumulated actions and reactions of karma or work become manifested in the same proportion. How such actions and reactions take place, what the different procedures are, and in what proportion they act are all subject matters of Maharaj Parikshit's inquiries from the great Brahmana Sukadeva Goswami. Life in the higher planets, known as the abodes of the denizens of heaven, is obtained not by the strength of spacecraft, as is now being contemplated by the inexperienced scientists, but by works done in the mode of goodness. Even on the very planet where we are now living, there are restrictions upon the entrance of foreigners into a country where the citizens are more prosperous. That's not referring to the United States anymore. It used to, but it doesn't refer anymore to the United States. For example, the American government has many restrictions for the entrance of foreigners from less prosperous countries. That's not factual anymore also. The reason is that Americans do not wish to share their prosperity with any foreigner who has not qualified himself as a citizen of America. Similarly, the same mentality is prevailing in every other planet where there are more intelligent living beings residing. The higher planetary living conditions are all in the mode of goodness, and anyone desiring to enter the higher planets like the Moon, Sun, and Venus must qualify thoroughly by activity in complete goodness. Maharaj Parikshit's inquiries are on the basis of proportionate actions of goodness which qualify one in this planet to be promoted to the highest regions of the universe. Even on this planet of our present residence, one cannot achieve a good position within the social order without being qualified with proportionate good work. One cannot forcibly sit on the chair of a high court judge without being qualified for the post. Similarly, one cannot enter into the higher planetary systems without being qualified by good works in this life. Persons addicted to the habits of passion and ignorance have no chance of entering the higher planetary systems simply by an electronic mechanism. According to the statement of the Bhagavad Gita 9.25, persons trying to qualify themselves for promotion to the higher heavenly planets can go there. Similarly, persons trying for the Pitralokas can go there. Similarly, persons trying to improve the conditions on this earth can also do that. And persons who are engaged in going back home, back to Godhead, can achieve that result. The various actions and reactions of work in the mode of goodness are generally known as pious work with devotional service, culture of knowledge with devotional service, mystic powers with devotional service, and at last, devotional service unmixed with any other varieties of goodness. This unmixed devotional service is transcendental and is called para bhakti. It alone can promote a person to the transcendental kingdom of God. Such a transcendental kingdom is not a myth, but is as factual as the moon. One must have transcendental qualities to understand the kingdom of God and God himself. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Then again, kindly describe how the proportionate accumulation of the reactions resulting from the different modes of material nature act upon the desiring living being, promoting or degrading him among the different species of life, beginning from the demigods down to the most insignificant creatures. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Well, if you read Srimad Bhagavatam, it can save a lot of money, time, and useless labor. Useless labor is trying to go to the moon or Mars or the asteroids or whatever. That's useless labor. It's going to be a failure. Useless labor is speculating to try and understand how the universe works. It's not going to succeed. And then again, useless labor, trying to understand who God is through speculation. It's not going to succeed. And then again, try and understand what matter is through speculation. That's not going to succeed either. So we see that Bhagavatam is science, including mathematics, including physics, including chemistry, including space exploration, including everything. It has all knowledge in it. You don't have to study any other book. And it already tells you what not to do and waste your efforts trying to do it, because it's impossible. But it also explains how you can do it if you follow Krishna consciousness. So people want to go to other planets. You don't need the rockets and things like that. Prabhupada already explained an easy journey to other planets, how you can do it. It's not complicated. And you want to understand how the universe is working, just read Bhagavatam with the help of bona fide devotees. You'll understand. You want to understand how the law of karma works? Just read Bhagavatam. It's all explained there. You want to be misled? Go to school. And you can waste the rest of your life trying to do things that are impossible. See? And basically it's useless effort, right? And a waste of money, a waste of time. So we've been talking about Einstein. So these verses are very pertinent to Einstein. He was trying to figure out who is God. He was trying to figure out what is philosophy, what is science. He was trying to figure out how the universe works. He figured a few little things, and he admits it also. He admits it. So did Newton. Newton and Einstein, two of the greatest, so-called, two of the greatest scientists in the history of Western world. Both of them came to the same conclusion. What is that? That was that whatever they did discover through their observation, like Newton, or through Einstein's what you would call borrowing from Faraday, Maxwell, and a few other people, and then reinterpreting the work they did, and then adding a few of his own realizations. He didn't do seminal research. Maxwell did, Faraday did, and they were both brilliant scientists. They did seminal research. That means fundamental research, right? Faraday realized that there's a connection between magnetism and electricity. And there are mysterious things happening when electricity goes through a wire and there's a magnet there also. So then it expands invisible energy. And then he called it electromagnetic energy because there's electricity and there's a magnet. So, and he discovered that, and everybody doubted him, you know. And he was not highly educated. He was a normal clerk, but he had a fascination for science, and he was held back for many years because he didn't have a degree. But he became very prominent because he discovered things that no one else had an explanation for. He discovered electromagnetic energy, right? And he was the one who recognized there was a connection between electricity and magnets. And then Maxwell was brilliant. He had the mathematical knowledge to support Faraday. And Maxwell codified that his mathematical formulas and equations to prove that there were things and energies that people couldn't see, but there was a way to harness them. And then comes Tesla, and comes Jagadish Chandra Bose, and then, of course, you had Einstein also. So what was Einstein's big thing? Light. He was fascinated by light, and he began to understand that light energy is more than just light or heat. There were other things going on with it. And he began to study it very carefully. And he realized that light is not exactly a wave. It's made up of individual, let's say, atoms of light. And because of that, he was able to reinterpret somewhat the work that Maxwell and Faraday did, and codify it into his equation E equals mc squared. That energy can be transformed into matter and retransformed back to energy. This was the basis of the electromagnetic. In other words, he combined all the knowledge and all the research that went before and gave it a more let's say comprehensive understanding and it became a very. It seemed to be a simple thing. E equals mc squared. E equals mass, and the square root of the velocity of light. So that's why he was fascinated by light. He understood that there's something very special. Of course, why? Because it's a reflection of the Brahmajyoti coming from the spiritual world. Of course, he did not believe in God. So, but both he and Einstein and Newton both had the same conclusion. And what was that conclusion? That whatever they discovered was just scratching the surface of knowledge. It was not comprehensive. It was not complete, and there was much more to discover. But they both ran into what you would call obstacles that they couldn't go beyond. So Einstein was not able to do the unified field theory. Newton thought that his equations about the motion of macroscopic bodies under the force of gravity and his understanding of gravity was completely explaining all phenomena that he was seeing. He didn't realize that his rules break down on when you begin examining microscopic particles going at the speed of light. So therefore Einstein had to come up with another theory. But even Einstein's theory is incomplete. And he realized it. And later on he started making statements like, let me see if I can. By the way, Einstein wrote a lot about religion and God. And we started hearing a little bit about it. Basically, I'm going to have to find it, but basically he was saying that whatever he has learned about nature is just scratching the surface of the ocean of knowledge. And Newton said the same thing. He said, we have only examined a few grains of sand in the vast ocean of knowledge. So see, now they can say that because they know their limitations. They tried to go beyond a certain point. They couldn't. And let's see where it says it. Okay, so yesterday we talked about Einstein's disbelief in a personal God and his acceptance of Spinoza's impersonal pantheistic God, which is like no God. And he had absolute, he was an absolute awe and completely, let's say, in love with the organization of nature. He respected that, but he didn't say that there was a God behind it. He rejected that, and he says the human mind, no matter how highly trained, cannot grasp the universe. See, this is the statements they're making. We are in the position of a little child entering a huge library whose walls are covered to the ceiling with books in many different tongues. The child knows that someone must have written these books. It does not know who or how. It does not understand the languages in which they are written. The child notes a definite plan in the arrangement of the books, a mysterious order which it does not comprehend, but only dimly suspects. That, it seems to me, is the attitude of the human mind, even the greatest and most cultured, toward God. We see a universe marvelously arranged, obeying certain laws, but we understand the laws only dimly. Our limited minds cannot grasp the mysterious force that sways the constellations. Yeah, the constellations, all the stars, all the planets, they're moving in perfect order, orbits. They're predictable. That's science, right? Like, they can predict an eclipse, like there was an eclipse last night of the moon, right? And there's going to be an eclipse of the sun very soon. They can predict these way before it happens because the universe is ordered. It's moving under specific laws, and and somebody did it, right? But because of the false ego. By the way, Newton was more a believer in God than Einstein, at least more in some kind of personal God than Einstein. Einstein, he's saying that the only thing he can believe is the natural order of nature, which for him is a big mystery, but he rejects completely the existence of a personal God. Okay. And then he says, we see a universe marvelously arranged, obeying certain laws, but we understand the laws only dimly. Our limited minds cannot grasp the mysterious force that sways the constellations. So he doesn't say a person, he says the mysterious force or energy. I am fascinated by Spinoza's pantheism. I admire even more his contributions to modern thought. Spinoza is the greatest of modern philosophers because he is the first philosopher who deals with the soul and the body as one, not as two separate things. That's idiotic, right? You can see how foolish these people are. Right? Okay. So we discussed those things. Then we come to Einstein's theory about afterlife, and it says, it said, on 17th July 1953, a woman who was a licensed Baptist pastor sent Einstein a letter asking if he had felt assured about attaining everlasting life with the Creator. Einstein replied, I do not believe in immortality. I do not believe in immortality of the individual, and I consider ethics to be an exclusively human concern. In other words, ethics, which means rightful way of acting, having self-control of the passions and so forth. He says it's an exclusively human thing. So, but if you talk about ethics and morality, the highest morality, highest ethics is Bhagavad Gita, is the knowledge that Krishna is speaking to Arjuna. The Bhagavad Gita is the supreme text or treatise of morality. Right. So, and this person says, I consider ethics to be an exclusively human concern with no superhuman authority behind it. See, you see where he's going, and because he got this, he was eponymous. In other words, he got the label that he was the smartest guy in the world. So now he starts expanding his so-called authority into understanding God, understanding the universe, understanding all these things. And people listen to him because he got touted as such a brilliant person that people thought, oh man, he's the smartest man in the world. But actually, he's the dumbest guy. He's not that smart. Okay, he was able to reinterpret somewhat and add a little bit to the work that Faraday and Maxwell did. But when it comes to understanding actually the material world, how it's functioning, understanding actually the existence of the spiritual world, and how understanding what is man's duty in life, he was zero, absolutely zero. His understanding is nonsense, you see. So when a person is falsely promoted as the smartest person in the world, but actually they're the dumbest, what does that make people look like? All the people, you can go on the internet now, you'll see so many eminent scientists and mathematicians. They're glorifying him. So many books have been written that he was the smartest man in the world. But actually, he's the dumbest. And now we're going to hear some more of his dumb realizations. He says, I consider ethics to be an exclusively human concern with no superhuman authority behind it. This sentiment was also expressed in Einstein's book, The World as I See It, which he wrote in 1935. I cannot conceive of a God who rewards and punishes his creatures, or has a will of the type of which we are conscious in ourselves. In other words, we make decisions in life, right? We like this person, we don't like that person. We want to pursue this path, we don't want to pursue that path. and so forth. So he's saying, I cannot conceive of a God who rewards and punishes his creatures, or has a will of the type which we are conscious in ourselves. So he's putting the human, imperfect consciousness superior to that of God. He said God does not have a consciousness like we do. You see? An individual who should survive his physical death is also beyond my comprehension. No, he didn't believe that a person is immortal. An individual who should survive his physical death is also beyond my comprehension, nor do I wish it otherwise. In other words, he said, I don't want to live after I die. I don't want to be immortal. I want to die and it's all finished. This is complete atheism. You say? Yeah. And this guy, the point is, I'm going to write a book about this because this guy is a phony, right? Just because he made a few, he has his E equals MC squared, that doesn't make him the smartest person in the world. And I'm telling you, Faraday and Maxwell were smarter than him. They did the seminal research. That's very hard. It's not easy. And they made the right conclusions of their research. And also, Einstein and Niels Bohr were enemies. And Bohr claimed that there's something mysterious. Well, Einstein came up with this idea of quantum and quantum theory. It's sort of, it was there already before him, but he sort of possessed it, right? And when quantum theory came into play, there was a problem with observation because quantum theory was not able to predict successfully the observations that were being made when you crack atoms and then the particles go out in different directions, and those movements were not being correctly let's say predicted by quantum theory. And Bohr said there's something mysterious going on at the bottom of matter, and we can't figure it out. You know, it's mysterious. And then, but see, Einstein was what you call a determinist. He thought that there are laws that control everything in the universe, and his goal became to prove that Bohr's was wrong. And then years later, when you have these cyclotrons that split atoms and so many things, and then they don't see the atoms, but they see streaks of light, and they can measure the light, and then they make assumptions about the movements of those atomic particles. So I can't explain the whole thing right now, but it turned out after a long debate that went on for about 30 years that Bohr was right and Einstein was wrong. You see, there's a lot of failures he had in his life. They don't. I mean, you can read about it, but in spite of all that, they still say he was the smartest guy in the world. So, but actually, he made a lot of mistakes in his life. Like, for example, if he was living today, he would be denounced by the Me Too hashtag. He cheated on he was married 3-4 times, and he cheated on, and because when he became famous, everyone was always around him. Einstein is going to speak, and all these women were just throwing themselves at him. He was like a NBA basketball player, and he was having a lot of illicit relationships. That's why he kept getting divorced. So here we see at the base this person, and then he was a member of the Ethical Society. Now, what kind of ethical behavior can he demonstrate when he's a philanderer? He's like, a follower of Bill Clinton. So, what can he inspire in other people as far as ethics go? And he was writing about it. You see, so then he doesn't believe there's life after death. An individual who should survive his physical death is also beyond my comprehension. Nor do I wish wish it otherwise. Such notions are for the fears or absurd egoism of feeble souls. Well, it's exactly the opposite. It's his false ego that won't let him accept a personal God, won't let him accept that there's life after death, and won't let him accept so many things because he has a big false ego. Enough for me the mystery of the eternity of life, and to comprehend a portion, be it ever so tiny, of the reason that manifests itself in nature. So his main thing is, look, there is reason, there is order, there is an incredible, let's say, scientific validation of nature. That's my God. So it's like this. There's two ways of looking at a great painting. Let's say it's the Mona Lisa or some great painting in history. One way is, oh, look at the lights and the darks and the shapes and the almost a three-dimensional vision and the lifelike smile of Mona Lisa and this thing and that thing. You know, they just go deeply into the work of the artist. The other way to look at it is, this is a fantastic painting. The person that painted this must have really been a fantastic person. So there's two ways of looking at it. One way is you just see the painting. The other way is you give credit and you recognize the intelligence and the art or the expertise of the artist, right? So here's Einstein looking at the universe, and he's looking at it like someone who only sees the Mona Lisa, doesn't think about who made it, who painted the Mona Lisa. And he's not giving any credit to the person that did it. But he himself, when he does something, he gets a Nobel Prize, he gets money, he gets a position in Princeton, he gets a free house, he gets so many things in recognition of the work he did, right? Which is very, very little compared to what God has done, right? But then the person whose work he's admiring, he refuses to give them any credit at all. You see how crazy these people are and envious. This is a person who's envious. It's not, a person who's envious is not satisfied to emulate someone else. They want to destroy that person. And this is what he's doing. This is demoniac. Right? So, he says, enough for me the mystery of the eternity of life and the inkling of the marvelous structure of reality, together with the single-hearted endeavor to comprehend a portion, be it ever so tiny, of the reason that manifests itself in nature. Einstein was averse to the Abrahamic conception of heaven and hell, particularly as it pertained to a system of everlasting reward and punishment. Well, I would agree with a little bit of that. The major difference between Krishna consciousness and the Abrahamic religions is that one can be saved even if they're in hell. Whereas the Abrahamic religions, which is Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, they think if a person goes to hell, that's it, they're finished. They're fried. They can never get out. And that's not true. So then he says, in a 1915 letter to the Swiss physicist Edgar Meyer, Einstein wrote, I see only with deep regret that God punishes so many of his children for their numerous stupidities, for which only he himself can be held responsible. Well, yesterday we read, or the day before we read 5th chapter, 15th verse. It proves Krishna is not responsible for the stupidity of the living entity. Man proposes, God disposes. He's not responsible. If people insist on doing nonsense, he said, okay, I throw my hands up. Just like you may have a crazy Aunt Mary, or you may have a child who's crazy, right? So after a little while, you just throw your hands up. Okay, they want to do that. What can I do? When they were a kid, I could control them, and now they're adult and doing all these crazy things. What can I do? Let them learn the hard way. So that's the same thing. Everybody has limited free will. We can either choose to follow Krishna's instruction or not accept them. And Einstein definitely has not accepted. He says, I only see with deep regret that God punishes so many of his children for their numerous stupidities, for which only he himself can be held responsible. In my opinion, only his non-existence could excuse him. You see? These are direct statements. He also stated, I cannot imagine a God who rewards and punishes the objects of his creation, whose purposes are modeled after our own. A God, in short, who is but a reflection of human frailty. So in other words, he's saying, look, human beings created God. There's no God. And they created him out of their fear and anxiety of death or punishment. And then he says, neither can I believe that the individual survives the death of his body, although feeble souls harbor such thoughts through fear or ridiculous egotism. Well, that may be true partially, but the fact that there's no life after death, that's false. Part of Einstein's tension with the Abrahamic afterlife was his belief in determinism and his rejection of free will. So again, see, he's rejecting things. That's why I say, whenever anybody writes a book, it's to reject something or limit you from going somewhere, right, with your curiosity. So he's limiting your curiosity about immortality. He's limiting your curiosity about God. He's limiting your curiosity about the laws of karma. He's limiting your curiosity about so many things here. He's part of the cancel culture. You see, he's not brilliant. He is teaching darkness and ignorance here. And because he came up with this formula E equals MC squared, that doesn't make him an expert in everything else, like, morality, ethics, God, spiritual world. What qualification does he have to even talk about it? Right? But no, he's usurping that validation that he's the smartest man in the world, so therefore he can talk about all these subjects and just speculate. And people are so dumb that they follow him. They believe him. The man who is thoroughly convinced of the universal operational law of causation cannot for a moment entertain the idea of a being who interferes in the course of events. That is, if he takes the hypothesis of causality really seriously. So when it says that he was a determinist, that means that he believed that we don't have free will. There's no such thing as free will. And we're being controlled by our own passions or our own ignorance, or that, but he believed that everything was determined, so he believed in cause and effect. Now, if we accept cause and effect as like the law of nature, we go into a state of illusion. Because the original cause is Krishna and the effect is Krishna also. He, again, separates cause and effect from God and says that there's cause and effect is produced by something in nature that they don't understand yet. You see? But he has perfect faith in it. This is why he lost to Boers. Boers said that there's something that's functioning outside of the laws of nature, and we don't know what it is, but it's there. And he said that's not possible. So they went back and forth for 20, 30 years, and finally it was proven that Einstein was wrong, that there are things that are mysteriously happening that there's no explanation for. See? And that's why Einstein was not able to complete the unified field theory, because there's things that are mysterious. Now, what is mysterious? Krishna can be he has mutually contradictory qualities. So that is, you cannot understand that through science. You have to understand the science of Krishna, but you cannot understand it with mundane science, especially if you're a determinist like Einstein. So he doesn't understand the powers that Krishna has. So he runs into a brick wall, just like Newton did also. They only went up to a certain point. They couldn't go any further. And this is what's happening. To the real scientists, they realize that there are these limitations. The fake scientists, the phonies, the nonsense, and the majority of them are all nonsense, they all believe that they can do anything. It's just a matter of time. See? Just like Bezos, he thinks he can send somebody to Mars, and or not Bezos, but the other one, Mr. Tesla. Yeah, Elon Musk. He thinks that he's practicing living on Mars right now, in the desert in Texas, in a 10 by 20, let's say, hut. He moved down there. He sold all his properties in California because taxes are too much in California. And California's going down the tubes. And he moved to Texas, where he's doing all his research on how to live on Mars. But this is all nonsense. It's all silly, futile activities that are not going to be successful. But anyway, what will be successful is, he'll put somebody in his new salon in 300-400 miles up in the air, and they'll have they won't be under the force of gravity, so they can float around in his new space salon, naked, and people will pay $150,000, $200,000 to go up there for about 1 day and enjoy sense gratification up there. You see, that might succeed, but going to Mars, no, you're not going to make it. Going to the moon, going to asteroids, and any of those places, they're not going to make it. They might send. They think they send these spaceships there or whatever, but they will not be able to live there. They don't have the bodily constitution to live in those places. Even if they go there, they won't be able to survive there. Okay, so then what was Einstein's so-called spirituality? Well, it was what he called cosmic spirituality. In 1930, Einstein published a widely discussed essay in the New York Times magazine about his beliefs. See, the man has so much following, right? Whatever he writes, they publish it right away in the biggest journals, like in New York Times magazine, with the title Religion and Science. Einstein distinguished 3 human impulses which develop religious beliefs: fear, social or moral concerns, and a cosmic religious feeling. He doesn't mention God, right? Because he doesn't believe God exists. Now he's trying to prove why religions exist. Religions exist because people have fear, social or moral concerns, and a cosmic religious feeling when they see the universe. A primitive understanding of causality causes fear. What is a primitive understanding of causality? Well, it's a non-scientific person fears things that they don't understand, like a tsunami or death. So there's things they don't understand because they're not scientists. They don't do any research. They don't understand the causality of things, right? And then he says, a primitive understanding of causality causes fear, and the fearful invent supernatural beings analogous to themselves. So in other words, that's called anthropomorphic beings. If there is a God, he has to have 2 arms and a head and 2 legs and be, have a material body like me, but he's just a little bit better than me, that's all. See? So he's talking about supernatural beings analogous to themselves. How can he be supernatural if he's analogous to the imperfect people? The desire for love and support create a social and moral need for a supreme being. Both these styles have an anthropomorphic concept of God. The third style which Einstein deemed most mature, originates in a deep sense of awe and mystery by the universe and its functioning. He said, the individual feels the sublimity and marvelous order which reveal themselves in nature, and he wants to experience the universe as a single significant whole. Well, that's what Einstein wanted to do. He wanted to create the unified field theory. Then he would have been the greatest scientist in the history of the world. He failed. Krishna is the unified field theory. But because he doesn't believe Krishna exists, because he never read the Srimad Bhagavatam, didn't have a bona fide guru, he made so many mistakes. But even when he makes a mistake, it sounds like it's valid, right? He said, well, there's three reasons why there's religion. One is fear, and the other one is deep concern about morality, and the third is being in awe and reverence or in awe of nature. And then this fear causes this, and the wanting to have morality and ethics causes this, and then wanting and seeing being awed by nature, and then you create this anthropomorphic God. Anthropomorphic means made in the image of man. You see. So it sounds like it's scientific, right? It sounds like it's philosophical, but it's all nonsense. So he said, the individual feels the sublimity and marvelous order which reveal themselves in nature, and he wants to experience the universe as a single significant whole. That means they grasp it, they control it now because they understand everything about it. Einstein saw science as an antagonist of the first two styles of religious belief. Antagonist of fear, antagonist of moral compass, right? And he says, but as a partner in the third, yeah, he's also in awe of nature, right? So that gives you a certain religious feeling. Oh, how magnificent the sun is, the sunrise is, and how magnificent the way the planets are moving in orderly fashion, and this and that. He maintained, even though the realms of religion and science in themselves are clearly marked off from each other, there are strong reciprocal relationships and dependencies, as aspirations for truth derive from the religious sphere. Okay, what does that mean? See, now he uses a lot of big words, and that's another trick that they use, right? Because you can't exactly understand what they're saying on the surface, but you're impressed by the words and by what he's trying to say. See, this is their trick. This is the way they baffle people. Let's read that again. It says, even though the realms of religion and science in themselves are clearly marked off, that means there's no relationship of religion and science. That's what he's saying there, right? They're marked off from each other. However, there are strong reciprocal relationships and dependencies. Okay, so what is a strong reciprocal relationships and dependencies? As aspirations for truth derived from the religious sphere. So people want to understand truth through religious belief. But they created the religion themselves because of fear, because of moral compass, and then because of their awe of nature. So he also has awe of nature, but it's different than the religionists who have awe of nature. But everybody is aspiring for the truth. So Einstein wants it through research and his material science, empirical science, and the religionist wants it through creating a anthropomorphic God and creating some kind of a moral system, and then making up the myth that God created everything, this world in the way it is. See? So he's making fun of people using big language. A person who is religiously enlightened appears to me to be one who has, to the best of his ability, liberated himself from the fetters, meaning the chains, of his selfish desires, and is preoccupied with thoughts, feelings, and aspirations to which he clings because of their super-personal value. It seems to me, so you might think, oh, he's saying something positive now. No, it's very negative. It seems to me that what is important is the force of the superpersonal content, regardless of whether any attempt is made to unite this content with the divine being. In other words, he's recognizing that it's something good to have a strong faith in a God, but there is no God. So you should put that strong faith in nature. That's what basically he's saying, you know. That strong faith should be in nature, not in God. It seems to me that what is important is the force of his superpersonal content, of this superpersonal content, regardless of whether any attempt is made to unite this content with a divine being. For otherwise, it would not be possible to count Buddha and Spinoza as religious personalities. Well, he's claiming, well, Buddha doesn't believe there's a personal God. Spinoza doesn't believe there's a personal God. But they're both religious, you see. So they were religious without believing that there's a personal God. That's what he's getting at. See, he's not a dumb person. He's smart, but in a twisted, demoniac way, right? He doesn't understand anything about Buddha, that's for sure. But he understands the surface, that Buddha didn't believe in God. Right? And Spinoza doesn't believe in personal God. Accordingly, a religious person is devout in the sense that he has no doubt of the significance of those superpersonal objects and goals which neither require nor are capable of rational foundation. In this sense, religion is the age-old endeavor of mankind to become clearly and completely conscious of these values and goals and constantly to strengthen and extend their effect. If one conceives of religion and science according to these definitions, then a conflict between them appears impossible. For science can only ascertain what is, but not what should be. So he creates, he's very, very clever. He wants, this is what a mathematician does. They first of all state their first principles. So in other words, they're creators. They create their own frame of reference. And in that frame of reference, they make certain absolute statements, right? But they make the frame of reference. Now, Einstein just did that. He gave examples of two people who don't believe God is a person, but they're religious people. And he puts himself in there too, saying, look, I'm also in awe of nature, right? So you don't need this anthropomorphic God to have a pseudo-religious experience by appreciating with awe and respect the order of nature. And you don't have to have a belief in God in order to have an ethical or morality, ethics and morality. You can have it just by appreciating nature. See? So he's saying if this is the way you define spirituality, then there's no conflict between science and spirituality, because both of them don't believe in the existence of a personal God. They just believe in the order of nature. And see how clever they are? He is. An understanding of causality was fundamental to Einstein's ethical beliefs. In Einstein's view, the doctrine of a personal God interfering with natural events could never be refuted in the real sense by science, for religion can always take refuge in areas that science cannot yet explain. So, in other words, someone has cancer, right? So they pray every day to God, to Jesus, right? And all of a sudden their cancer goes away. So there's no explanation for it. There's no scientific explanation for it. That's what he's saying. So therefore religious people go to areas where science cannot really explain, right? Sometimes. Sometimes they say, well, you only live another 3 months, and the person goes on and lives 30 years. Or like Devannath, right? He had this growth, and it was causing tremendous pain, and it was and the doctor said we have to operate. So he asked me, what should we do? What should I said, don't do that. He's giving you some time, so you just do this. You take take wheatgrass juice, follow this diet, do this, do that, and we'll see what happens. Well, what happened is that the polyp went away. Now, the doctor was amazed. He said, well, yeah, that's interesting. It went away, whatever you did, keep doing it, And he said, and I'm glad I made a mistake. No, he's not glad he made a mistake. He's just upset that the guy was able to heal it himself. Now, did he ever ask him, how did you do it? No. I asked David, did he ask you how you did it? He said, no. He wasn't interested. He just said, well, whatever it is, you just keep doing it. Okay. So anyway, here we see how how Einstein is actually not that smart. He's just clever, like a fox, but not smart. He doesn't have real intelligence because he's wrong on many, many things. And we'll continue this some more tomorrow. However, if you read Bhagavatam, what we read today, it's all about the universe and how it's functioning. What's that? Oh, thank you. Oh, you want the check? Let me give you the check. Okay, all right. Thank you. Hari Bol. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Yes,